Well, good afternoon. Welcome to this edition of a podcast of the United Nations University in the Netherlands. My name is Diego Salama. I'm the head of partnerships and communications here at the Institute. And I am delighted to be joined once again by Pedro Conceic. Pedro, since January 2019, he has been the director of the Human Development Report Office of UNDP. Prior to that, from October 2014, he was Director of Strategic Policy at the Bureau for Policy Program Support, also at UNDP, where he co-led the UN's participation in the G20 Finance Central Bank governors meetings. He also managed UNDPs and engaged with financing for development processes and contributed to articulate UNDP support to the implementation of the 2030 agenda. Before that, he was chief economist and head of strategic advisory unit at the Regional Bureau for Africa, also at UNDP. Pedro, delighted to have you. Welcome back. We are here now to discuss once again the Human Development Report, which was a very fascinating read. So why don't we start with the theme of this year's Human Development Report is a matter of choice, people and possibilities in the age of AI. Tell me a little bit about how did you decided on this focus and why are you discussing about this topic now?
Thanks, Diego. Great to be with you and with all your listeners. So the theme of the report actually is related to the pursuit of a trilogy of reports that were inspired by the 2022 Human Development Report, where we identified what we call a novel uncertainty complex that was driven by aspects that were creating instability, uncertainty in the world, one of which was political polarization, which was the theme of last year's report. Another one was rapid technological change, particularly around AI, the topic of this report. So this answers your question. And the third relates to very rapid processes of dangerous planetary change, which is going to be the topic of next year's Human Development Report. So the reports sort of build on this trilogy and analysis that was done in the 2022 Human Development Report.
Very interesting. The report explores that AI is a, quote, matter of choice and highlights the importance of agency. That means people's ability to make decisions to shape their own lives. How should we understand these ideas in practice, especially in a world where AI and other technologies are expanding, but also constraining human agency?
I think the key idea of the report is to suggest that the evolution and deployment of AI, as with any technology, ultimately depends, or its impact depends on a broader set of institutions, incentives, and ultimately choices. And it's not something that is determined by the technology itself. And so the idea of emphasizing the notion of choice is to suggest that we should not cede that agency that you talk about, Diego, to either technologists or technology leaders or those that understand the technology, but it's something that we need to reclaim. So we need to reclaim choices so that we shape the evolution of the technology of AI as well as its deployment in ways that, in our case, advance human development.
It's a very interesting area, and I'd like to explore that a little bit more. In terms of, well, we are still in the infant years of AI. How would you assess the international systems or the multilateral systems response to AI? How did we cope? How did we do?
Well, I think that AI is something new and not new, right? Because AI has already been part of our lives for decades. But it was something that was sort of playing in the background. So it was deployed by firms, by governments, in all sorts of applications. One of the most consequential applications of AI for several years now is the use by digital platforms and social media firms to provide recommendations on what people should engage with and see. in their feeds, or when they do searches online, or when they try to buy something online. So all of those recommendations were already powered by AI for years now. What I think is new over the last couple of years or so is the fact that AI moved from being in the background to being at the forefront, facing consumers directly. So what we're seeing now is that AI is being much more accessible in a much more decentralized way. And we provide a lot of evidence in the report that suggests that people are using AI at a much higher rate in a decentralized way based on the decisions they made as workers, as individuals, as parents, as students, independently of whether the organizations in which they are embedded or institutions in which they are embedded make decisions on the deployment of AI or not. So I think that it's this new configuration of AI, more on the user side, more on the demand side of AI, that we are interested in exploring. Just to give you a data point to illustrate the way in which AI is diffusing around the world. When ChatGPT came online in November of 2022, over 95% of the traffic that went through the ChatGPT website came from high-income countries. A few months later, the majority of traffic was coming from middle-income countries. So you could see how there was a very rapid diffusion in access and use of AI. And it's in the sense that it's somehow unprecedented, or that we are in an inflection point. And what the report does is to invite us to reflect on how can we make the most out of this new configuration of AI.
That's a good segue into my next question, which is this: what does this mean in practice for policymakers? And how should they make decisions related to AI governance? Let's start there.
So I think there are two aspects to AI. One is to sort of look at how to shape the supply. So when we think of AI governance, often we think about how do we ensure that AI is safe? How do we ensure that the deployment of this new technology does not create harms, be it through the misuse of the technology, so people that want to misuse it for harmful things, like cyber attacks, or to avoid accidental risks. So many of the things that may emerge as a result of the deployment of AI, even if we take all the precautions on the side of misuse, may generate unintended consequences, unintended risks. So I think there's a lot of focus on this AI safety agenda, if you will, and a lot of the governance is associated with these aspects, which include also dimensions associated with the concentration of the supply in some aspects of the supply chain. So there's a lot of emphasis on that. Now, different jurisdictions are taking very different views on this aspect. And I think here the role of the United Nations, and you also asked about international governance, is critical. And I think the Global Digital Compact provides a framework that is very important, because it essentially asks or invites us to do three things. First, to have a continuous dialogue across different jurisdictions on the regulation of AI, so that we can learn from each other, and different jurisdictions can understand their motivations and what has gone well and less well in their efforts to regulate AI. So this is the first important thing. Secondly, it ensures that this analysis is scientifically informed. So it establishes a scientific panel to look at the evolution of this very rapidly changing technology that will surely have many surprises in front of us. So I think that having the discussion and the debate grounded in science is crucially important. And the third thing the Global Digital Compact does is to ask all countries to be given an opportunity to participate in the governance of AI. So one of the things that we have seen up to now is that there are very large asymmetries in the ability of different countries to engage in these discussions. And so the Global Digital Compact asks for support to be given so that lower HDI, lower human development index countries can also be part of the discussion. So this is sort of on the supply side, but again, the emphasis of our report is more on the demand or user side. So what can AI do to enable people to augment or expand what they can do?
I think I wanna follow up on that. So a lot of the discussions seem to be focused more on the regulatory aspects and the risks around lack of regulation. You touched briefly on the issue of equality in terms of access, which is such a fundamental thing. But beyond the regulatory risks, and also more proactively, how do you think, and perhaps you can reflect this on the report itself, but also on your expertise, how do you think it's going to help, or it can help enable faster development? So what do you think in the day-to-day of the work of your colleagues and all of our colleagues of the UN system, not just UNDP, but overall, people working in country teams, people working in peace operations, people working in humanitarian settings? How do you think, if they read the report and they follow the Global Digital Compact and the Pact of the Future as a whole, how do you think, what opportunities do you see for AI to really unlock development and help us deliver on our mandates?
So Diego, I think that one of the things the report aims at doing, and I think it's the first step that we all need to do to address your question, is to understand what AI can do and what AI cannot do. Because given the way in which a lot of the discourse around AI is framed as a technology that surpasses what people can do, can do things better than humans. So this kind of framing leads often to reasoning that leads people to extrapolate towards thinking that AI can replace people. So we can, since AI is so good at, for instance, answering the questions of a medical exam, or can pass an exam that would certify someone to be able to practice law. Therefore, the implication is, in many people's framing and thinking, that in the future, we won't need doctors, or in the future, we won't need lawyers, because we can have AI. It's so smart that we can just rely on AI to do that. And I think that what the report argues is that this is a rather limiting way of seeing not so much the potential of the technology, but the potential of humans and the power of people to actually see themselves not as a victim that can be replaced by this technology, but reframing the question towards understanding what AI can do, what AI cannot do, and what can we do to leverage the potential of this new technology to enable us to do the things that we care about. So I think that is the first point, is to understand what the technology can do and cannot do. So I'll just give two examples of what it can do and what it cannot do. So one of the things it can do that can be quite empowering is that it provides access to not only information, which the internet already did with a web search, but provides access to expertise or know-how. So the way in which we interact with these AI chatbots is very different from the way we will interact with a web search engine. It's much more active, it's much more interactive, it's much more iterative. It can understand natural language, meaning regular spoken language. You don't need to type a search in English on a web search engine. You can actually speak in your natural language. with these AI chatbots. So it's a different way of providing access to what we call advanced expertise in the report. So it can be quite empowering in that sense. But there's a catch, right? There's always a little bit of a catch. So one of the challenges with the current configuration with AI is that it sometimes makes things up. It really is not, the answers that it provides are not necessarily grounded in the truth, in facts, in science. The models are getting better, and particularly on science and math, there are a lot of improvements. But there's always the need to have some kind of human evaluation of what the outputs of these AI models are, so that we cannot delegate fully human decisions in many cases, particularly in high-stakes situations, to AI, and we need to have humans sort of in the middle to evaluate these the outputs of AI. So out of this, what emerges is actually a context in which, rather than looking at AI as something that is going to replace people, there are many, many opportunities for AI and people to work together. And rather than being worried or having a fatalistic view on a future in which AI is going to replace people and jobs, it gives us instruments and a power, if we make the right choices, to actually harness AI to augment what we can do. So I think it's an indirect answer to your question, but I think this is the first point. And the report spends a lot of time actually trying to articulate what AI can do and cannot do. And I think this is the first step for all of us then to reflect on how AI can help us to do our work in a better way. The final comment I would make on this point is that we should also not fall prey to the notion that we should deploy AI for AI's sake. In many cases, we cannot actually use AI, or it doesn't make sense to use AI. Darren Ashemoglu, the economist, warns us of the dangers of deploying what he calls so-so AI. So sometimes AI solutions are pushed onto people or firms to automate processes in which AI actually is not that good. And this is problematic because you then face a situation where people are replaced by AI actually. You have no increases in performance or productivity, and you have depressed demand for labor or potentially job losses. So I think we should not be succumb, I guess, to the AI hype, to this notion that AI can do everything, and we should particularly be concerned with the deployment of this so-called so-so AI, because it can then depress demand for labor without gains in productivity, and that's exactly going in the opposite direction of what we need to strive towards.
I think that's super interesting. And I mean, one area where, I mean, you touched about the impact that it may have, positive and negative, in the future of work. But I want to pivot to education. I'm sorry. Education systems are often not the fastest to adapt to these things, yet, of course, education is central to the building of human capabilities. So how should education prepare itself, but also the people who pass through educational institutions, to deal with a life alongside what will be intelligent machines? Are they prepared, or how should they evolve?
So I think that the key principle that we advocate in the report is to look at AI not as a crutch, but as something that enables students to learn more, teachers to be more productive and efficient in their job, and institutions that have responsibility to look towards education, to find ways to leverage and harness this sort of complementarity, right? So I think this is the general principle. I should mention that AI has already been widely deployed in education, even when that guidance is not present. So we cite data in the report from the US, where a recent survey was conducted that found that less than 20% of US school districts were providing guidance on the use of AI to schools. And yet 60% of principals and 40% of teachers were already using AI. So you can see the centralized use of AI that was already taking place, even if no guidance is present. And we don't have data, but one would assume that students are also using AI quite extensively in their work. I speak from personal experience, looking at what my children do. So I think the key here is, again, to ensure that AI is not used as something that replaces, for instance, critical thinking, but as a tool that enables students to learn in new ways. And frankly, I think we need to figure out how to do this. I think that there's a lot of uncertainty around the evolution of the technology. There are also potentially different domains in which AI can be used more effectively than others. So, for example, in math, in science, if you have AI models that are more robust towards not making things up, I think that is where we have potentially more leverage to use AI in education. In other areas that may be more culturally contingent, I think we need to be careful, in part because there are a number of biases associated with the way in which these models are constructed, the data that is used to train them, as the jargon in AI says, that bias some of the responses to the cultural context in which these models were developed. So they may not be appropriate for different contexts. And we show also in the report that there's a bias towards giving responses that are culturally aligned with very high actually HDI countries, and less and less with lower HDI countries. There are also other biases associated with these models that relate to the underrepresentation of some segments of the population in the training data that again can create problems in the use of AI in some contexts.
Yeah, also,
So,
that's also related even to the access to academic literature, because one of the ideas or one of the beautiful potential that it has is that it could democratize the access to knowledge. However, there is a risk as well that because of the biases, that the literature that is taught by the models to students remains only from the global north, and whereas it perpetuates the lack of access to but visibility from academic literature from the global south, no?
exactly. You articulated much better the point I was trying to make. But again, I think the distinction I would draw here is between science and math, for instance, which is not necessarily culturally contingent to other disciplines and other domains of knowledge in which you need that cultural contextual awareness be present. So this bias towards the responses that mirror the way in which people in very high HDI countries think needs to be looked at very carefully. And that then provides an argument as to why it's important to have these countries engage also on the supply side of AI. So how do we enable them to have data sets that are used to train these models, as opposed to relying only on the data and the languages that are more present on the internet today.
I think, yeah, that's going to be the biggest challenge also, where I think the United Nations can play a positive role in ensuring that working with these with these platforms to ensure that everything gets visibility, but then also that the biases are controlled. And I think one of the biggest contributions of the UN system is that we serve as that controlling element in the sense of catching some biases and trying to reverse them and trying to give visibility. That's something at UNU that is super important for us, is to give the visibility, but also the access to the global south in terms of access to the knowledge, but also access and visibility of their knowledge. There is amazing literature, academic literature, policy reports, and so on that are produced in the global south, from which everybody could learn. So I think that that's an important challenge. Now, I want to
just on that, Diego, I just a reference to UNDP's more programmatic and operational work around AI, which goes exactly in the direction that you're suggesting. So a lot of the work that we're doing as an organization around AI is to provide those capabilities for countries to have, for instance, low resource languages much more present, much more widely used in the training of AI models, and the knowledge that exists in low HDI countries much more present in the training. In a way that, and I think this is a very important point, in a way that is not extractive, right? Because
exactly,
if you just provide access to data that exists in low resource settings, and this data is then used by companies that are already very large to make their models even better and to capture even more and more value, with little value going to these low-income countries and settings, I think that is problematic, right? So I think it's about not only working on the data side, but on the broader set of capacities and capabilities that are needed for these countries to be meaningful participants in the supply side of AI.
absolutely. That's very, very well put. Okay, so as of course you know, and everybody's aware, this year the United Nations is turning 80 years old. Of course, we're also amidst a process of reform under the UN80 initiatives. So this is a very complex time in which the United Nations as a whole finds itself. So can you tell me a little bit from your perspective, what does the report suggest about the role of multilateralism in its role of safeguarding human development?
So, but I already alluded to this a little bit. I think the Global Digital Compact gives us the instruments for the multilateral system to play a role, a positive role in the evolution of AI in a direction that enables us to make the most of it to advance human development. And I think it does it in a very realistic way, in an aspirational way, but in a also very realistic way, because the reality, as I mentioned earlier, is that different countries are divided at the moment on what to do in terms of the regulation of AI. And at the same time, I think everybody recognizes that just doing this AI regulation on a country-by-country basis is not efficient or even feasible, because this technology, as I alluded to earlier, spreads so quickly across the world. So again, I think that having that understanding that, and the report goes into this a little bit, that some aspects of AI regulation, not all, but some aspects require this international conversation and over time, potentially a convergence towards a set of principles that are widely shared, is going to be crucial. And so this can only be done in a multilateral setting. And I think that if anything, It makes the role of multilateral institutions, including the UN, even more important going forward.
Do you think that AI as a tool has the possibility to help the UN system and the multilateral system broadly to help recover some of the trust that it has been? There's been this erosion of trust in international institutions, academic institutions, expertise as a whole. And of course, we're not immune to that. So do you think we can use this opportunity and follow the path of the Global Digital Compact to claim back some of that credibility, some of that trust that has been, for unfair reasons, but has been eroding for the last few years?
Well, that's more the topic of our last year's Human Development Report on political polarization, Diego. And if you remember, we also had a conversation around that. And, I can just reiterate our findings when we examine this question of trust and where does the loss of trust comes from. And according to our analysis, a lot of the loss of trust is correlated with the increase in perceptions of insecurity. So what we found was that the more insecure people feel about the world they live in and about the prospects for the future, the lower the level of trust they have in one another, and the lower the level of trust they have in institutions. Because I think trust is something that is more of a symptom than as something that you can dial up or down, right? So I think you need to take a step back and understand, okay, what's driving this erosion in trust that you alluded to? And then when we can make a diagnosis and identify some of the drivers of this loss of trust, acting on those drivers is what hopefully will enable us to increase trust. So if this analysis is correct, that at least one of the important drivers of the decline and erosion of trust is this perception of insecurity, that people feel they live in an uncertain world. They are unclear about prospects for them in the future, prospects for their children. If we find ways of addressing these perceptions of insecurity, and sometimes not perceptions, but the reality that we live in an insecure world. If we look at patterns of violent conflict, for instance, record levels of forced displacement, many people around the world have reasons, objective reasons to feel insecure. So I guess what I would suggest is addressing those drivers of the erosion of trust would potentially enable us to reverse the decline and the erosion of trust. So to the extent that the UN and multilateral institutions are needed to address those drivers, and I believe they are, I think that they can contribute to over time to a reversal in this erosion of trust. Now, can AI play a role? I think it depends. Again, I think we should not look at AI as a panacea or a silver bullet that is going to solve all our problems. But if we understand again what AI can do, what AI can not do, and have judicious application of AI to enable us to be more effective, then I think we can make a difference. Just to give you an example on education, we spoke about education a little earlier. There are interventions in education that are known to improve learning outcomes. One of these interventions is teaching to the right level, if you will, so that students are able to learn according to their own pace. And this is obviously very hard to implement in low resource settings, where often you have one or a few teachers that have to teach to a large classroom of students at all different levels. So one of the things that AI can do in these settings is to enable students under the supervision of a teacher or a few teachers to interact with an AI-powered chatbot in ways that the content that they're exposed to and the pace of learning is geared towards their, their level. So I think this is just an example of the kind of reasoning that I think is going to be important for all of us. I think first we need to understand what are the processes that we are confident are going to enhance the outcomes we're interested in, whatever they are. So I gave an example on education, but other people are interested in enhancing health outcomes. Other people are interested in, lowering political polarization, mediating violent conflict. So whatever the issue we're interested in, we need to ask what do we know or are reasonable confident is effective. And secondly, then ask the question, can AI help us to do this more effectively or at a larger scale? In many cases, the answer is going to be no, but in others, it might be yes. And so I think it's this kind of exercise of this disciplined approach to the use of AI that I think we need to engage in going forward.
Yeah, so I think that frame of mind of AI perhaps is not a silver solution, but it's a silver tool. What we make of it, it may become that's how it becomes a silver solution, because we are still the decisive factor and how we use it, how we implement it. I think that's key, and that's the message, that it's what we do with it, what counts. I guess you can say that for most of knowledge. So I think one of the areas in which we can agree on is that nobody can do this alone. No institution can do this alone. Nobody can tackle these issues. So for us, research and education partnerships are fundamental. So here at UNU-MERIT, we focus on innovation, governance, and public policy, all rooted on the notion that evidence-based policy making is fundamental. So let me ask you, from my institutional perspective, how can research institutions like UNU support the goals outlined in this year's report? And what kind of collaborations do you find most impactful with knowledge centers like UNU?
So Diego, I come actually sort of disciplinary from that world, the world of research that MERIT engages in. So trying to understand how technologies have impact in the economy, in society, the way in which they diffuse. And I think there's a lot of work that has been done by MERIT over the years that has been quite influential in this human development report specifically. So I think this shows the impact of the work that UNU-MERIT does. So one of the key insights of the work that MERIT has done over the years is that ultimately the impact of the technology is going to be less about the capabilities of the technology as such, and much more about how production processes are going to change to make the most out of this technology, right? So this notion that has been a constant in our conversation and a sort of a refrain in the report, basically that it's not about the capabilities of the technology, but ultimately how are we going to use this technology to enable us to do things better, more efficiently, to be more productive. And again, that has to do with how are we going to change the way we organize firms, how we organize productions, how we organize education, how we organize healthcare. So it's much more on that institution and organizational side that the impact of AI is going to emerge or not emerge. This insight, I guess, comes from the research that MERIT in particular has been doing over the years. So I think this is evidence as to how already the work that UNU-MERIT has done has influenced at least the framing of our HDR. In addition, UNU has been a leader on AI for many years, and in fact, the rector of UNU is an expert on AI himself, and I had a good set of conversations with him, and this thinking has also been very important in enabling us to shape some aspects of our human development report. It has certainly been very influential for us in the Human Development Report Office, particularly in this report, but more broadly has been a constant source of inspiration and information to enable us to produce our human development reports.
That's really, really encouraging to hear. So looking ahead, as we are moving towards much more uncertainty, we continue to have a number of crises, interdependent crises that we are facing. How do you envision the evolution of the Human Development Report? What role do you envision it playing in shaping the conversations that are so necessary in areas of justice, progress, and dignity?
I think the Human Development Report has now established a track record that has essentially two legs, and I envision it continuing to play this role going forward. So one of these legs is the approach, is the notion. It's the importance of assessing progress and evaluating policies in ways that go beyond just looking at the performance of the economy. Captured now perhaps in this interest again in going beyond GDP as a measure of progress. So this has been something that has been the foundation really of the human development approach. And so what we try to do every year with the Human Development Report is to ask whether this approach can enable us to look at challenges or opportunities in ways that provide new windows to interpret this uncertainty that we're living through, and also give a sense of agency towards shaping our choices in ways that enable us to enhance human development. So human development is a very simple idea that people should be able to live lives to their full potential. So again, the economy matters a lot, but so do a number of other things, including achievements in health and education that are intrinsically important. So they matter not only to the extent that they make people more productive in the economy, even though that matters, but they matter intrinsically to enable people to participate in society in all sorts of different ways. So this is, I guess, the first leg, the conceptual approach and the lens that it provides, inviting people to look at development challenges and opportunities, perhaps in different ways. And the second leg, which is crucially important, relates to the metrics, to the measurement. And since the beginning, we've been producing, since we began in 1990, we've been producing the Human Development Index, which brings together indicators that try to measure achievements in standards of living, health, and education. But it's not the only metric we have. We have other metrics that account for poverty, for instance, again, in a much more multidimensional way with a multidimensional poverty index. We have indicators that look at gender disparities. We have indicators that look at the extent to which countries advance human development, but may also increase environmental damages and harms to sustainability. So I think it's this combination of a concept, of an idea that I think is very, very important, and we try to leverage and use in every human development report, along with the metrics that enable us to assess the extent to which we're going in the right direction towards enabling people's lives to their full potential. That I think, or I envision, human development reports to continue to be making over the years into the future.
And as an avid reader of them, I can tell you I'm looking forward to that evolution and to continue to use them not just as a barometer to see where the paradigm of development is, but also understand what are the trends and how is the United Nations adapting, reflecting on these topics. So as a final message, if you could leave our audience, many of whom are students, policymakers, researchers, if you could leave them with one message about this year's report, what would it be?
Reclaim choice and agency over the future and the deployment of AI. Don't see that agency to anyone, to governments or to tech leaders or to whomever claims any source of authority. I think we have to reclaim agency and choices to shape both the evolution and the deployment of AI.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank Mr. Pedro Conceic, Director of the Human Development Report Office in New York for his time. Pedro has been wonderful. I hope this tradition of hearing and learning from you about each year report continues. And on behalf of UNU-MERIT and UNU as a whole, I want to thank you for your time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Great to be with you.